everyone, it's Jennifer from Auburn Yoga and Pilates. Tonight we're going to do some yin and restorative yoga, primarily at the wall, and it's primarily for anxiety, but again, even if you're not feeling anxious, you'll still get some benefits. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so we'll start off in a comfortable seated position. It may help you to elevate your hips a bit. You might be more comfortable. So please consider sitting on a folded blanket or a pillow. You want to lift up through the top of your head. Inhale through your nose, all the air you can fit. And then slowly exhale out your mouth. And again, inhaling through your nose, all the air you can fit. And exhaling slowly out your mouth. One more time, inhaling through your nose, all the air you can fit. And slowly exhaling out your mouth. Now, try to keep that same depth of breath, but try to make it a completely nostril breath. So in through the nose and out through the nose. As you inhale, let your chest and your belly move away from your spine, filling the torso with your breath. And then as you exhale, moving the belly and the chest back toward the spine again, helping to facilitate pressing that breath out. Trying to keep that fluidity, trying to keep that depth in your breath. And then trying to think about something that you would like to manifest into your day. Now, if you're watching this live, it is toward the end of the day if you're here in New England. So it may be that you want to think about something you want to manifest into your tomorrow. So taking just a little while to think about that. Would you like to reconnect with an old friend? Would you like to make sure that you set apart some time to do some yoga or Pilates? Do you have a special project that you want to complete in your yard? Nothing's too frivolous, nothing's too silly. What would you like to manifest into your day tomorrow? And then let's start to paint a picture of what that looks like. So basically creating a scene and making sure that you put yourself in it where you're experiencing what you said you'd like to manifest. Make your picture as realistic as possible. And once you get the visual in there, be sure to add other senses. What sounds do you hear? Are there any distinct smells around you? If you're eating, you can involve taste. And regardless of what you're doing, thinking about how you actually feel, really making this as real as possible. And then just sitting in this space for about 2 minutes. So often we aren't clear with the universe as far as what we really want. So setting this time aside to really be specific. to be definitive. Universe, this is what I want to manifest. Hopefully tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, as soon as possible. Please make it as real in my 3D world as it is in my head and heart right now. And deepening your breath, beginning to bring yourself back into the room, switching the cross of your legs and circling your spine. So if you've never done a yin and restorative practice before, it is a very slow practice. There's a lot of stillness in yin and restorative. We do much fewer poses than you would in a typical, what people would think of as a typical yoga class. Reverse direction, but the time that we spend in the poses allows us to really go deep. So we'll probably be finding opportunities to move into places that you wouldn't be able to otherwise move into if we were moving at a quicker pace. We're giving ourselves the gift of time and space. And then holding it in the center and taking that right arm up, reaching. Reach that arm as close to your ear as you can. Actively press through those fingers. Try to take the bend out of the elbow. If you'd like, gaze up at that hand and lengthen that side body. Exhale that arm down, inhale, sweep the other one up. Same thing, ground down through those sitting bones. Reach up through those fingertips. Exhale that arm down. Same thing, side one. And side two. And dropping it down. So we're going to start off with Viparita Karini, which is legs against the wall. Now, you may choose to simply put your hips against the wall and your legs up the wall, or you may choose to take a large towel or a blanket and fold it and place the folded blanket right at your lumbar spine. That will give you just a little bit of a back bend. For some people, it's a little too much, but for some people, you find it delightful. So if you do choose to use the blanket, you want to place the blanket about a hand's distance away from the wall. And that's so that you can get your tailbone down in that space. Of course, if you're not using a blanket, you can just sit sideways to the wall, and then taking those legs up the wall and taking those hips close to the wall. So you may have to do a little wiggle like I did. So once you're here, you either have the prop under the lumbar, or you don't. If you have tight hamstrings, you'll probably find that you can't put the back of your hips right against the wall, that you probably have to be a little bit away from the wall, but go as close to the wall as you can. And allow your arms to come by your side, palms facing up. Now some people like them right beside their hips, and other people like them out a little bit wider. You find the place that works for you. So Viparita Karini, this legs against the wall, is a partial inversion. Because clearly we have our legs up the wall over our heart. So literally changing the way that gravity impacts your body here for a little while. Usually our feet and ankles are at the bottom. Here we give them the opportunity to be at the top. So your feet and ankles and your legs overall may like this pose a lot. They feel invigorated because they don't have really anything weighing down on them like they do when we're in a traditional seated or standing position. And this pose is supposed to be energizing yet soothing. So those two are not mutually exclusive. You can be both. So energizing to maybe not flip your entire self upside down, but to partially turn yourself upside down. And relaxing, because doing so is supposed to calm the central nervous system. So if we go to that these poses are for anxiety, this should be calming to the central nervous system. So of course, we're going to be doing, several poses as a group to put them together into a class, but there's no reason that you can't isolate any of these poses and do them if you find yourself in a situation where they would be beneficial. And then staying in the same basic position, but taking your feet together, coming into a butterfly against the wall. Now, entirely up to you. You may gently press against the inside of your legs, helping to open your inner thighs and hips a wee bit more. You may not need or want to do that. You may be perfectly fine just letting those legs go to where they go. it's likely you will feel something. And as time goes on, hopefully you're able to get more deeply into the pose. So again, you can hold that light press, or sometimes you can do that light press. The legs go to where they go. You can let the arms go by the side. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes and just really relax into the pose. What a wonderful gift it is that you're giving yourself to simply be in the moment, to enjoy the place that you're in, to notice it, to savor it. And then extending those legs again. And this time, we're going to come into a wide leg position. Now, for some people, there's a little too much intensity here on the inner thighs. If you have tight inner thighs or tight hips, you may find this is a bit much. And you may want to take a pillow or blanket and use it to support the leg. However, if it's not too intense, then you can just let your legs fall out to the side. And obviously you've got gravity working to pull those legs down. So you should end up getting a fairly deep stretch through that inner thigh. And we'll stay here a little while longer, but this will be the last of our supine poses, or partially supine poses for now. We'll come into standing after this, just to mix it up a little. And then taking those legs back up, bending them, rolling over to one side, and bringing yourself back up. So as promised, we're actually going to come into a standing position. So this pose here is the equivalent of a melting heart pose that we often do at the floor. So you want to try to position yourself so that your feet are approximately hip distance apart, and you're going to fold forward and rest your forearms so that they're about hip height or a little over hip height. And you want to let your heart melt toward the floor. Now if you can, you're keeping your ankles under your hips. If that's not possible, they can be a little bit behind the hips, but try to bring them as close to under the hips as possible. So in this one, you should really get an opening through the shoulders, the chest. Many people will feel a deep stretch in their hamstrings. Try to relax into the pose as much as possible.
Pressing your hips to the center of the room while you're here. Lengthening that spine. If possible, keeping those elbows about shoulder distance apart. And then pressing yourself up off the wall, coming up slowly, and turning around. Taking the back of your hips to the wall. Now, ideally, your heels would be right against the molding of the floor. That's fairly challenging. So you may want to start with your heels a little bit away from the wall and your feet just a little bit wider than your hips today. And then coming into a forward fold. Now this is an intense forward fold here, so you may find that you need some sort of prop, or you may be okay without it. But trying to keep the back of your hips at that wall for the entirety. If you don't feel like you're getting enough of a stretch, take your heels closer to the wall. So you should feel a stretch through your entire back body here, back of the legs, and back of the torso. You may find that once you're here for a little while, again, you feel more comfortable and you're able to go a little bit more deeply into that space. If at any time you start to feel dizzy or lightheaded, please come out of the pose. Again, this does have, it's an intense forward fold. So you've got a partial inversion again here. One of the reasons that this pose is common. Also able, hopefully, to feel the decompression of your spine. Lumbar spine is on top. Cervical spine is lower. And then if you did bring your heels to the wall and you want to step them forward, bring the back of the hips to the wall and slowly coming up out of that forward fold. Now, coming back to the floor. And coming back to a position similar to the one that we were in before. So taking those legs up the wall. Now on this one, you may or may not get your hips to the wall. I am going to keep my hips a little further from the wall on this one. Taking both legs up, take that right leg, cross it over, flex that inside foot, pull that pinky toe back toward the knee, and come into a figure 4 stretch. Now, many people would not feel a hip stretch where I am. You may need to go a little more deeply into this pose. It may involve taking your hips a little closer to the wall, or bringing that inside leg a little bit closer to your torso, bringing that upper foot a little closer to the wall. Again, it's all about finding where you feel a deep hip stretch. So you may not think about the tension that you hold in your hips, but oftentimes our hips are one of the significant storage places for tension in our bodies. You know, we think about maybe our back or our jaw or our chest, but oftentimes we don't think about the hips. So it's important to get those deep hip stretches. That inside foot is likely going to want to relax. Try to keep it flexed. And then releasing the side, allowing that leg closer to the wall to lengthen, uncrossing the opposite leg, and doing the same thing on the other side. Now, again, because we're not perfectly balanced people, you may need to move your hips closer to the wall, or you may need to move your hips further from the wall. You want to flex that foot, pulling those toes back toward the knee, keeping that leg in external rotation,
finding that hip opening. So even though we don't see any visible movement here, you should feel that constant energy in the pose. So the leg is pressing against the opposite leg and vice versa. And there's that constant press to externally rotate that leg to get that opening in the hip. So generally these yin poses are held anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes. Today we've been holding most of these poses between 3 and 4 minutes. Two standing ones are about 3 minutes each. The initial floor ones were about 4 minutes each. These figure 4 stretches are about 3.5 minutes each. And then again, lengthening that leg, uncrossing. Now if you're able to, scooting yourself back so that your hips are right against the wall. So we're actually going to combine 2 of the poses that we did a little earlier. We're going to do a half butterfly and we're going to do a half wide leg stance. So bending that right leg as you allow that left leg to go out to the side. Now you want to make sure that you find a place where you feel balanced, even though you're not perfectly symmetrical, because obviously one leg is extended and one leg is bent. There is still an aspect of symmetry in your body. In the way that you should have a symmetrical waist. You should have fairly symmetrical hips where one hip is not lifted up off the floor and there should be an even distribution of weight across the back of your hips. And again, if the intensity is too much for that long leg, you can always place a pillow or a block under that leg. then switching sides. So the long leg becomes the bent leg becomes the long leg. And again, you're looking for that half butterfly, that hip and thigh stretch, that hamstring and thigh stretch on the long leg. And I don't know about all of you, but on this one I do really have to be conscious of keeping my hips and torso fairly symmetrical. It's definitely seems a bit easier to be thrown off balance in this one if you're not paying attention. But there's just one of the many reasons that we do yoga, to make ourselves more aware. More aware of not, really of what is going on the outside, but what is going on in the inside. How are we sitting, standing, laying? Are we releasing? Are we tensing? Are we being authentic in our pose? All things to consider. And then bringing both legs up. And now already time to come into a place for final relaxation. So you can just go into a traditional final relaxation, or since we have been using the wall, you may want to place your feet against the wall to ground yourself. Again, it's up to you. You can let those feet fall to the side. And you may want to take a blanket and place it on your hips or your thighs just to ground yourself.
where you can completely relax. Try to allow your body, your front body, to relax and soften. Also releasing tension from that back body. Noticing if the energy flow through your body feels any differently than it did at the beginning of the class. Noticing your breath, but not feeling like you have to make any adjustments to it. And of course, you can always pause the video and take a little a little longer final relaxation if you'd like. Or when you're feeling ready, you can bend those legs and plant those feet. Roll over to one side and come up into a comfortable seated position. Of course, you could sit on that folded blanket or that pillow if you'd like. Inhaling, sweeping those arms up. Exhaling, bring those hands to heart center. The light within me salutes the light within you. Namaste. Thank you for joining us. Remember that all of these live videos end up stored on our YouTube channel. So feel free to subscribe and share with anyone who you know who might enjoy them. Take care. Hope to see you soon.